The sea stretched endlessly, each wave crashing into each other like a giant wall of water. The vast sky had only grey clouds drifting lazily. In this remote place, in the middle of the vast ocean, a relentless battle was taking place, a battle between fishermen and giant tuna. A battle between human strength and the power of nature. The fishing boat shook under the pressure of the strong waves. The fishermen, their clothes soaked with seawater, their hands calloused from long days of pulling nets. Still stubbornly clung to the deck. Everyone understood that, if they were to be careless for just a second, they could be thrown into the sea at any moment. But for them, this was not fear, but a part of life, the life of sea warriors. The fishing nets had been lowered early in the morning, when the sun had just appeared on the horizon. Hundreds of meters of nets gradually sank into the dark water, the buoys sparkling like small stars on the sea surface. Below, the giant tuna were moving, the powerful fish, their muscular bodies like steel warriors. Were rushing to the bottom of the sea. A moment later, the first signs appeared. The cable was tight. The buoys began to shake violently. A giant tuna had taken the bait. Everyone on board immediately rushed into position. A fisherman jumped to grab the rope, using all his strength to hold on. The tuna struggled, pulling so hard that the fisherman was almost dragged across the deck. But he did not let go. Others rushed to help. Screams rang out, the sound of waves crashing. The roar of the engine, all combined into a symphony of the sea. The tuna was still not defeated. It turned around, thrashed violently, creating fierce waves. Another fisherman took up the sharp spear, aimed straight at the target. Everything happened in a flash, a decisive stab. The spearhead pierced the water, firmly embedded in the body of the giant fish. Blood stained the sea. The fight was over, but the joy did not last long. Another strong tug from the line signaled that another tuna had been hooked. And so the fight continued. One fish after another, one by one, were pulled onto the deck. No one had time to rest. They worked at an incredible speed, coordinated like machines that had been trained for decades. Sometimes, storms suddenly came, bringing strong winds and waves as high as mountains. The ship rocked violently, seawater poured onto the deck. But no one stopped. They continued to fight, continued to pull the net, continued to face the sea with all their courage. Finally, after hours of struggling, the hold was filled with fish. Giant tuna, each weighing hundreds of kilograms, were neatly arranged on the deck, the silvery sheen of their scales reflecting the afternoon sun. Everyone was exhausted, but there was no sign of exhaustion on their faces, only pride, joy of victory, and gratitude for the sea. The last tuna were pulled onto the deck, their bodies still jerking, as if unwilling to give up. The fishermen laughed loudly, their laughter echoing in the sea breeze. Mingling with the sound of waves lapping against the hull, sweat mixed with seawater ran down their sunburned faces. But no one paid any attention. They knew that each of these fish was a trophy, the result of a day of relentless fighting between man and nature. The deck was soaked with water, slippery with fish blood. Some fishermen hurriedly rinsed the fish, while others busily sorted, weighed, and marked them. Each tuna was worth tens of thousands of dollars. And just one small scratch could significantly reduce its value. Therefore, they had to work carefully and professionally like artisans on the ocean. When the sun gradually set, they paused to have a simple dinner right on the deck. A few small tuna that were discarded would be processed immediately, with just a sharp knife and a few sharp cuts. The fresh fish was neatly arranged on a wooden plate. No need for elaborate cooking. Just a little soy sauce, a little mustard, and you had a sumptuous meal in the middle of the ocean.
Collecting the catch, high-quality fish are carefully extracted. Remains a global leader, from tracking fish in vast oceans to auctioning.
Laughter echoed in the dark night. Stories about previous trips, about terrible storms, about giant fish that had been lost to the sea. One of the men laughed loudly, recounting the story of the year before, when he was almost dragged into the water by a swordfish because his line was too tight. The others laughed loudly, clapping each other on the back, as if there was nothing to be afraid of in this world. But just as everyone was relaxing, a deafening sound rang out, the alarm. One of the fishermen quickly rushed towards the large fishing rod at the stern. The line was tight, the rod tilted sharply to one side, signaling that another giant fish had been hooked. No one had time to rest. Everyone immediately rushed into a new battle. Rough hands tightened the rope. Muscles tensed under the ship's lights. The fish below was struggling violently, pulling the ship to one side. Everyone understood that this was not an ordinary tuna. It could be a giant swordfish, or even a shark. "Hold on tight," someone shouted loudly. The rope pulled hard. A fisherman was almost thrown off the deck. But immediately, others rushed to hold him. No one was allowed to let go. No one was allowed to retreat. This was a battle between man and the ocean. Between strong will and the power of the ocean. The fish lasted for nearly an hour. The fishing line was so tight that it seemed about to break. The fishermen took turns pulling, using all their strength. Finally, when the fish gradually appeared on the surface, everyone held their breath. A giant swordfish, more than 3 meters long. With a sharp nose like a real sword, was thrashing violently in the black water. One person hurriedly grabbed the iron spear, aimed carefully, and threw it into the water. The strike was accurate. The spearhead stuck firmly into the fish's body. It struggled one last time, struggling so violently that seawater splashed onto the deck. But then, its strength gradually ran out. The whole team pulled it up together, little by little, when the giant body of the swordfish was placed on the deck.
Taiwan and Vietnam playing a key role in the industry. Tuna fishing in the region relies mainly on 3 main methods: handline, purse seine, each with its own characteristics.
Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Another victory, another spoils of war, another battle had ended, but they knew that the sea never sleeps. Tomorrow, other battles would continue. The giant tuna was still swimming down there. The swordfish were still darting across the ocean. And they, the brave fishermen, will continue to go out to sea. Continue to face the ocean, nature, and their own fate. The night at sea is not over yet, although the giant swordfish has been captured. The waves continue to beat against the hull, reminding them that the ocean still has countless mysteries yet to be discovered. The fishermen wipe their sweat, checking the long fishing lines that are still deep in the water. They know that, with just a moment of carelessness, the sea monsters can pull away a 100-meter long line, taking with them their chance to change their lives. A fisherman looks up at the sky, where the stars shine brightly in the dark sky. He smiles faintly, remembering the times he was beaten by the ocean. the fierce storms that swept past. But no matter how many dangers, they still return, time and time again, because their blood has mingled with the ocean. Their souls are tied to the waves. Suddenly, a piercing screech came from one of the electric winches. The fishing line began to tighten, shaking violently. Everyone rushed forward. This was a sign of a huge fish. One person quickly tightened the line, while the others prepared their tools, iron hooks. Spears, even ropes, ready to tie up the prey. The first jerk was so strong that it shook the whole ship. Everyone gasped. This was definitely not an ordinary tuna. It was too strong, too ferocious. It could be a shark, or a swordfish even bigger than the previous one. Everyone joined forces to pull, bit by bit, but the fish in the water was not easily defeated. It dove deep, causing the line to stretch as if it was about to break. One fisherman shouted, "We can't let it escape." Use a buoy. Immediately, a large buoy was hooked to the fishing line and thrown into the sea. This buoy would tire the fish out faster, as it could not pull both its weight and the buoy at the same time. The battle lasted for nearly 2 hours. Everyone was panting, their muscles aching, but no one would let go. Finally, when the light from the ship's lights shone on the water, they could clearly see the shape of the fish. A giant swordfish, almost as big as the ship's hull. With a nose as sharp as a dagger, its eyes were cold, as if it was challenging the people on board. But the fishermen were used to this scene. One man firmly grasped the iron spear, took a deep breath, and then threw it into the water. The spearhead went straight into the fish's body, creating a deafening sound. The swordfish struggled so hard that water splashed, but it was too late. The whole team quickly tightened the rope, pulling it up from the water. The fish was still thrashing around, but it was gradually losing strength. When it was placed on the deck, a fisherman sat down on the floor, gasping, "This time, it is definitely one of the biggest fish we have ever caught." Everyone laughed loudly. The laughter resounded in the ocean night. These fish were not only valuable in money, but also the pride, the achievement of those who dared to challenge the ocean. But before they could rest, a loud explosion was heard in the distance. Everyone turned around. A huge storm was brewing. The sea wind was howling, and the water was starting to churn. Another battle was about to begin. But this time, their opponents were not giant fish, but the fury of nature. Often used to make premium sushi and sashimi. The fishermen on the boat, although hard-working, do not forget to enjoy the fruits of their labor. One person took out a small fish that he had just caught and quickly cut it into fresh sashimi slices. Eat it. Nothing is fresher than fish that has just been caught from the sea. Everyone held the slices of fish, dipped them in soy sauce and wasabi, and put them in their mouths. The natural sweetness and softness melted right on their tongues. If this dish was brought to a restaurant, it would probably cost $100 a portion. One person joked. The captain laughed loudly. But now we can eat it for free. That's worth it. The whole boat resounded with laughter. Amidst all the hardships, these moments were the most worthy rewards. The voyage was not over yet. After a night's rest, early the next morning, everyone prepared for a new day of fishing. This time, they were not only aiming for tuna but also for another target, swordfish. Swordfish are extremely aggressive predatory fish. They have long, slender bodies, high dorsal fins and especially sharp noses like a sharp sword. When hooked, they not only struggle but also rush straight into the ship, sometimes piercing the wooden hull. The captain reminded, Everyone be careful. Swordfish are not like tuna. They are not only strong but also very dangerous. The fisherman nodded. Check the fishing lines and hooks. They dropped the lines into the sea. Waiting. An hour later, the line suddenly tightened violently. A giant swordfish had taken the bait. It rushed forward at a terrifying speed, pulling the entire coil of line hundreds of meters long. The person holding the line had to hold on tightly to the side of the ship to avoid being pulled into the sea. Increase the pull. Don't let it escape. 2 or 3 people rushed to help. The battle with the swordfish began. The fish struggled frantically, trying to escape the hook. It jumped out of the water. It's nearly a 3-meter-long body revealed under the sunlight. Everyone held their breath. A fish like this could be sold for a very high price. But catching it was not easy. The battle lasted for nearly 40 minutes. The swordfish was exhausted, but it still kept resisting. When it was pulled closer to the ship, it suddenly charged straight into the ship's hull at a terrifying speed. Be careful. A fisherman quickly grabbed a sharp spear, aimed accurately, and threw it down. The spearhead stabbed straight into the fish's body, ending the battle. It struggled one last time and then stopped moving. Everyone breathed a sigh. Of relief. And everyone was sweating profusely. This was one of the biggest swordfish they had ever caught. The captain nodded. You guys did a great job. If you bring this back, it will definitely fetch a good price. The whole ship cheered in victory. The sun began to set. The fishing trip was almost over. They checked all the fish they had caught. Tuna, swordfish, and many other types of fish, the result of a difficult but also glorious journey. The ship turned its boat back to port. From afar, the harbor lights appeared, as if welcoming the children of the sea back after days of drifting. A young fisherman looked back to the mainland and smiled. I miss home. I miss my wife and children too. The person next to him patted his shoulder. As long as we reach the shore safely, we will have time with our family again. But then the sea calls again, and we set sail again. They knew that trips like this would never stop. The ocean always has. The storm was approaching. Dark clouds covered the sky. The wind began to get stronger. The waves were pounding as if they wanted to swallow the ship. Everyone on board immediately took action. No one had time to rest after the battle with the giant swordfish. The ropes were tightened. The nets and fishing gear were pulled in. Everything had to be secured before the storm hit. The captain stood firmly in the middle of the deck, his eyes tensely looking at the horizon. He had been at sea for decades, and just by looking at the sky, he knew how dangerous this storm was. Everyone in position. If necessary, tie the safety ropes to the hull. No one hesitated. They were all too familiar with this scene. The sea was never easy. And every trip could be the last. The wind grew stronger. The waves were so high that they almost obscured the horizon. The ship rocked violently. At times it seemed to be lifted off the water before falling back down with a deafening noise. White columns of water splashed onto the deck, making everything slippery. A fisherman lost his balance and was almost thrown into the sea. But his teammates quickly caught him. Screams rang out everywhere, but no one panicked. They had faced the sea all their lives, and they knew that only calmness would help them survive. The entire fishing team could not believe their eyes. The giant bluefin tuna was struggling madly on the surface of the water. Each of its movements creating small waves around it. The sunlight shone down, making its silvery blue skin sparkle. A beauty of the ocean, but also a prize that everyone was longing for. One person shouted loudly, "Pull hard, don't let it escape." The team used all their strength to pull the long fishing line up. Centimeter by centimeter, the fish struggled, but they did not give up. Sweat beaded on their foreheads, their arms numb, but no one stopped. This was not just a fish, but also the result of perseverance, courage, and months of sticking to the sea. Finally, with a decisive pull, the giant fish was brought to the deck. It was still struggling, but its strength was exhausted. A fisherman quickly used a wooden hammer to hit it hard on the head, ending the fight. Everyone stood around, panting, but everyone's faces were filled with joy. They had just caught one of the biggest bluefin tuna of this trip. One person laughed loudly. "Brothers, tonight is a party." The whole ship cheered and clapped. It was not only the joy of victory, but also mutual recognition within the team. They knew that, on this ship, each person was an indispensable part of the journey. As the sun slowly disappeared behind the horizon, the ship turned back to port. On deck, giant tuna lay in layers, the result of a hard day's work. The sea breeze blows gently, carrying the salty taste of the ocean. A fisherman stands still, looking far away to the horizon, smiling contentedly. They know that, even though today is a wonderful day, tomorrow, the challenge will continue, and when dawn comes, they will set sail again. Clap aboard. Thank you for following the journey of these brave fishermen. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the most authentic footage of life at sea. See you on the next voyages.